Welcome to Norwegian Spitfire Foundation. This is NSF Talks.
Hello and welcome to NSF Talks. NSF Talks is a podcast series aiming to dive deeper than ever before into the complexity of Norwegian Spitfire Foundation, our mission, and the various of people that are involved in helping us achieve our goals, and that is to acquire, restore, operate and maintain Spitfires. We hope you enjoyed our talk with Espen Shetland last week, and if you didn't listen to it, we recommend that you do. We want to do another one quickly now, so we're going to mix things up a little bit today and turn the tables around, as you probably already can hear. Between 2008 and 2016, he wrote 8 books about historic aviation, 4 of them in English and 3 of them are novels. He's been a board member of Norwegian Spitfire Foundation since 2014 and have been heavily involved in our social media doings since the start. You might have heard him on NSF Talks, but now he is the subject of interest. Please welcome Tor Idar Larsen.
Well, thank you. Tables have indeed turned.
Yeah, it's hopefully the people before noticed that, hey, this is a different voice. So yes, we will just go straight to the questions. There are many things. I can just introduce myself. I'm Knut Åshammer. I'm the film producer of Norwegian Spitfire Foundation, and it's very interesting for me that we can have this talk now, as we're both basically authors, one in writing and one in moving images. So we'll begin with what everyone also gets as their first questions, and that is, what were your first memories or experiences of the aviation world that left a lasting impression?
Yeah, well, just before I get to that question, I'll just say that NSF Talks, we're just trying out new ideas and seeing what works and what doesn't work, and I just wanted to make another one of these podcasts without further ado and much trouble. So I just simply decided that we would do this again, Knut, and we would just shift positions a little bit and just see if in the future perhaps we can be more than 2 people, maybe 3 people, or just change things up a little bit. So yes. Yeah. Did I forget to? No, I haven't answered your question. So
no.
First, and I've come to realize when I've spoken to a few people that this interest, historic aviation it's a diverse interest, but I think that, well, not all, but many people have inherited this interest from someone else. Mostly, fathers or uncles or grandfathers, and that's the impression that I get when I talk to people. Not always, but sometimes. So. Yes. What was your question? My first.
No, just what got you? What was a lasting memory? Must have been as a kid, like that. Wow, this was amazing.
Didn't we speak about this a little bit? It's interesting, yes. But my first my first memories in historic aviation. There's a few, because back in, you're way too young, Knut, so you don't remember this, but back in the 80s, we had these comic books. They're quite expensive these days because they're a collector's item. But when I was a kid, they were still around, at least for a few more years before they just sort of disappeared. But they were called Påvingene and Kamp, and I think these were copies from Britain. I think in Britain they're called Aces High or something like that. So one of my first memories, because I'm sure my dad did this on purpose, but he introduced me to historic aviation by reading those comic books. And I especially remember this story of a Mosquito crew encountering the ME 163 Comet. Did I get the numbers right? I think it's I think it's something like
the
that.
163.
So, yeah.
Yes.
So I was like 6 or 7, and he read that story to me while on the sofa home, and then and I'm sure he bought more of these comic books, and but that's the story that sort of kick-started my interest. But then you had I'm not sure when he started doing this, but he was always interested in aviation, and he was always drawing Spitfires and stuff. And when I was a kid, he also took his private pilot's license. So I was a part of that, and I joined him when he drove to airports in Hamar and small airfields, and getting rides in Cessnas and stuff like that. And then he took his exam, and we were flying around. So, but then I was like maybe 9 or 10 or around that age.
So you think your first flight in an airplane was that with your father?
I don't know. I don't know. But I have one specific memory of that, because he knew this local man, and he had a Cessna. It wasn't a 172. I think it was a 210, which had a bit more power, and it had a retractable undercarriage. And
that's fancy.
Yeah, and this guy, he was quite known, like at least around the local area, for being a bit of a wild pilot. So we got rides with him, and we also got a ride in a few other. But what I remember is that we were taking a visit to my home, where flying, and this wild average. I'm sorry, not average, but middle-aged guy. He just, he dove, he went down, quite fast. I don't remember if this was a Cessna, if it was a Piper Cherokee or whatever, and then he pulled up so hard from that dive that I remember being like, pulled back in my seat, because I was like 7 or 8 years old or something like that. So, but honestly, don't remember much of these flights. I remember, getting a ride with this other guy from Reinsvoll airfield to Hamar, just to get some fuel or something. And my dad wasn't even, I'm sure he was waiting somewhere. So, but I did get a few of these rides. But I think it was the Spitfires and the Mustangs, and I think that's what caught my eye. And then when you're a kid like that, I'm sure I told that story too. But you sort of mix, reality with fantasy, or you imagine things. And because I've always been, because of some other guy I know, he was a bit older than me, and he was really into heavy metal. So he played me, or gave me, a tape by TNT, which is a Norwegian heavy metal band, and on their last song, I'm sure they're trying to simulate a thunder, because it's called Knights of the New Thunder, and this thundering roar. And I was playing that song, and I think my dad said something like, "Oh, that sounds just like when Rolf Arne Berg went down in 1945 and crashed into that barn in Elde." But in my world, I thought that's the sound. That's Rolf Arne Berg going down, because I didn't know if it was the thunder or anything like that. So I sort of mixed those two. So, and then you start legends and myths and tales of the old times of flying in combat and stuff like that. And I think in the first grade I was already drawing Spitfires and Messerschmitts and stuff like that. doing combat.
Yeah.
Which was so I was already hooked. I didn't even know it, but I was already on board, and I'm sure that my dad got his interest somewhat from his father again. So this is like 3 generations of aviation, but just taking different approaches, so to speak, because my dad, went, taking the license and being interested, but I went, doing the books and social media and stuff like that. So and then he I remember my uncle, because he was like slightly interested as well, and he had this videotape, a VCR videotape of the Battle of Britain, the movie from '69, because he had videotaped that from Swedish television, and I got hold of it. So I just continued watching that movie over and over and over again.
You probably broke the tape almost.
Oh, very close, very close. I have no idea how many times I watched that movie, and I was talking to Espen about that too, and I got the impression that he had done exactly the same thing, and just watching those Bouchons and the Spitfires, and you never get around to, you never finish being interested, but I was a kid, so my dad took me to see Memphis Belle when I was, I think I was 10, and I remember yeah. So so that was in the movies, and I remember that when they were going on that mission to Bremen, I think the intensity of, because I knew what they were doing, so the intensity of that takeoff, I don't know, I must have been practically shaking when I was watching them take off on that mission with all those B-17s. It was, and then you had I think NRK even showed Piece of Cake. If you're familiar with Piece of Cake.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't know if that's before my time, but that's very good that they did that.
Oh yeah, Piece of Cake. I think they shot it in '89 or '90, or was it '88? It was Ray Hanna and Mark Hanna, Stephen Gray.
Famous bridge scene, which everyone knows.
Yeah. Oh, everyone knows that scene. So. Yes. That was on NRK, but it was on a bit late, and I sort of censored myself because I was too young. So and my dad was like telling me it was quite graphic, because I think Moggy got shot and the bullets went through him, and then you saw there was a hand that got shot.
It's not as you could say it's not as romanticized as Battle of Britain. It's more a bit more brutally honest.
Yeah, and I didn't really understand the humor back then, but I Derek Robinson, the author, sort of played a huge role in my writing later on. But but I've watched Piece of Cake now, so don't worry, it's not like I haven't censored myself from watch. So, but these things, they make a huge impact. And then we spoke about those air shows. You were too young, sadly, probably. The
That's
historical.
Probably going to be most of this interview.
Yeah. So too bad. The historical air shows at Gardermoen in 1990 or 91, and then you had another air show in 92, and then you had the huge Royal Norwegian Air Force when you had the Red Arrows coming in. You had the Tornado and the Italians and the French. They all came to Gardermoen that year, and that was absolutely massive. Don't remember much of it. From the 92 air show, I remember one name, and that's Ray Hanna. They kept talking about Ray Hanna, and so I remember that name, Ray Hanna. So that's my one of those those childhood memories that I remember.
And all of this must have come together to inspire you to become an author, since this sounds like for me what inspired me to start getting involved into historic aviation was the simulators, and it has sort of the same parallel, that it's a mix of child imagination and fantasy, and you're imagining you are a pilot and you're doing all of this you're sort of recreating history in a simulator, and obviously your imagination is much more powerful than the software. So that inspired me to keep going and then join these massive battles with people online, hundreds of people flying together and recreate history, and that again built up to go and recreate or try and do this in film and make documentaries.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
how was this for you? When did you start thinking, oh yes, I want to write about these things? Pretty early, I guess.
Oh yeah, man. I'll just go back to what you mentioned before I did those books, because I was online too and flying simulators just 10 years before you did. And so I got myself a computer when I was 16 or 17, and a few years down that road, they Flight Simulator came along, and then you had these simulation games called Warbirds and Flying Circus and stuff like that. So I was online and I was doing that stuff, and I later found out that I could take some of those experiences, because I found out that they simulate. They're not real, but they at least simulate, because okay, you're in a Spitfire Mark 1 and then you're up against a Focke-Wulf D9. What do? You don't try to fly away. You have to turn. See, so you get a basic impression of what a dogfight is like. And so I managed to take some of that and put that into my books, and that stuff comes from simulation, just like you. So and that's why I was just leaping forward just a little bit to the last book I did, which I dedicated to those simulator guys as well, because they're a part of this in a big way. So and so I managed to do that, and I think I flew Warbirds for a few years, and then SSI on and off and stuff like that. So and in the early 2000s, you could still write to these war heroes, because they were still alive back then. So I wrote a lot of letters to a lot of them, and they replied. So they all replied to me.
And you did this by letter?
By letter,
yes,
indeed. Just forming up few differences here and there, and when I'm writing those fighter pilots, I just add a few. I remember adding a few things about that, and Wilhelm Moe replied, and a few of Per Våle replied, and then I didn't know that Finn Torshager, he was the one that I first wrote about. I didn't know that he had passed away, but his widow replied to me, and so we actually just started to exchange letters for a while. And then I think it was after maybe a year or so doing that, she sent me his memoirs. Am I on to your question now, or am I?
I'm just I'm listening very intently, since this is very fascinating to hear, since you are creating a personal connection with the families or the relatives, or even with the pilots and veterans themselves, and this must create I imagine a very special feeling of trust, that they trust you, and they trust you to tell their story.
I was very surprised that she had so much trust when I asked if I could do something in regards to his memoirs, because I hadn't really been writing anything before that, except that I was on a complete high because I just did my bachelor's degree. I think that was 2007. So, and then I got a good grade on that. So I thought, okay, so maybe I can do something, because these college professors or whatever, they actually enjoyed my writing, because I don't think what I wrote about was so huge or so good, but I probably got the grade because I managed to make it flow, and that it was good. My writing was good, so I thought, okay, so I'll see if I can, getting a confidence boost from that. Maybe I'll offer to write something about Finn Torshager, which I did, because his memoirs, he sort of wrote them like he would, talk, and it's not really, you can't really publish his memoirs without tweaking them a little bit.
Yeah, there needs to be context.
Yes. And so my plan and my dad's plan, because he was also a part of that, and he actually wrote a chapter in that book. But our plan was to try to create a book that was written in present tense, and to make that a little bit of a introduction to a younger generation of people. And that was, yeah.
I remember your book very well, since I was when we got to know each other through the foundation in our beginning. I read your book about Finn Torshager, and I still remember. I think it's his first kill, since that's a big moment for everyone, but what really hit me was that it culminated in the very long struggle to get to that point in his life. So he's been interested in aviation his whole life. He's been going through the war in Norway. He's been traveling all around the world to Canada, through all the dangers there, the dangers of training, then through to England and the Orkneys, and then all the way down to the dangerous south where the fighting is happening. And he finally managed to make a difference. As I said in my own interview, I think for them it must have been an amazing feeling that they feel that they are useful and making a difference. And I felt that in that moment when he, shot down his first fighter, and he was cheering and I think thumbs up to his wingman, and they were waving, and then they kept going on the patrol.
Yeah, and writing that in present tense was important, because I wanted to create some of that intense feeling, which you sort of get by writing like that, because you're not getting that tense feeling if you do it in past tense. Yeah. So that was important. I'm not sure if I decided to do it or if it just happened to be like that, but I think it sort of worked as an introduction. But then you have to break through to a public. It's easy to sell these books to people within the community. Yeah. Right. But like I don't really know anything about horses. So how the hell do you sell me a book about horses, right?
Horses for courses.
Yeah. So like that's the hard part with what we're doing and our interest, because we're trying to tell others that, hey, this is interesting and it's important.
It's a human story.
It's a human story. It's not, because I think most people think that, me included, just like to watch aeroplanes, which is just half, you have to combine man and machine. And I think that's the co-author of Into the Swarm, Chris Yeoman, who said that it's happening when you combine man and machine, because without the man, it's just a machine, and without the machine is just a man. But if you combine, you get something. And so I've sort of stuck to having focus on people and not like stuff inside the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine or whatever. I am interested in the people.
And that is an excellent point, since reading many different biographies, usually relatives of either it was their father or their grandfather, and they usually do it in past tense, and it feels a bit disconnected, since they're honoring their relative, they're honoring their father, so they don't want to dive down into how he might have felt and so on, but that you're able to make it feel like a personal story, that is incredibly powerful. And it's also very visible in your fictional fictional books.
Yes, man. Yeah.
That's
you caught like the essence of it. That's the essence of it. And neither Gladiator, the story of Finn Torshager, and the English version Viking Spitfire, it's not a facts book. It's not like a summary of someone, and it's not supposed to be like that. It's supposed to capture something. It's supposed to introduce you to something and to create an interest. I'm not like trying to, give this to people and say this is like detailed history. It's not supposed to be like that, because a lot of people do that. A lot of people write just facts, and that's it, and that's good, because you need that, but you can also do something else.
Yes, it's there's not. I don't think there's a solution or one solution for everything. So I think it's very good that we have authors like you who can dive into the personal aspect of historic aviation, since it's such a difficult, or it's a subject that has so many different components, and the plane is the smallest component. The aircraft itself is the smallest component. It can be very diverse. I will move on a bit to the what you just mentioned is you've written 8 books, and some of them has been in cooperation with other authors. So you've written books together with Chris Yeoman, and how is that? What is the process around writing a book together?
Oh, that was perhaps the easiest book I've ever done, and I'm sure he feels the same way, because what he had was leftover stories from another book that he wrote, and I had stuff about other pilots from my side that wasn't enough for a book. Turns out that 2 of them actually happened to end up as books later on, which was Finn Eriksrud and Leif Lundsten. So it's sort of like an introduction to those guys within Into the Swarm, and Chris, being English, he managed to do a good deal with the publisher, and considering that Into the Swarm is like at least halfway about the Battle of Britain, it sold quite well too. So it's like the easiest book that I have done sold the most, which it's ironic.
No, it's sometimes how you say easy is the best solution, but it means that you found something important, then that you found that hybrid between facts and storytelling.
Into the Swarm is more facts. It's just biographies of these people. So with the process of me doing these books, I started out like loose and writing sentences or things that no one really said, like with Finn Torshagen saying, yeah, it's cold outside, and I don't know if he said anything like that. And then with my last one, with Spitfire Glory, I'm totally focused on getting everything right down to the last detail of the serial number. So it's like a complete turnaround from where I started out.
How have you gotten any reviews from both Spitfire Glory and Into the Swarm? And do you see the difference in what they appreciate?
I do believe that people within the community, at least in Norway, they respect or appreciate Spitfire Glory much more than they do with the first one, because that book is not for them. The last one, Spitfire Glory, is more for them. Spitfire Glory is for the community and for people who are interested in the subject. And I don't expect people from the outside to be, so into Spitfires that they dig into different serial numbers and whatever Leif Lundsten did from day to day. But that's like superbly geeked out, that book, and I'm extremely proud of that book. And it is my favorite, considering there's just so much facts in it.
It's probably your most thorough work as well.
Yeah, I'd say so, because I was quite young when I did those first books, so I didn't really read, or I don't think it got many reviews and stuff like that. But what I got from Spitfire Glory was pretty good reviews, because I acted perhaps more like an academic when I wrote that.
Yes.
To some people, just boring, but to nerds, quite fascinating. But so what I had to do was I needed to get all of those the storytelling out of the way in a different sense than putting that into the same book, because you can't really do Spitfire Glory or the book about Finn Eriksrud, Mosquito Attack. You can't really do those because those are facts driven. So I did those 2 novels just to please myself, or just get time off, because in those days, back in 2010 and forward to 16, I had an insane amount of time to do whatever I want, and I spent between 2008 and 2016, looking back, I spent an insane amount of time doing historic aviation. If I wasn't writing anything, I was researching something or taking photos or editing photos or going to England, or I was doing stuff for NSF. So the amount of time I spent on historic aviation is just insanity looking back.
And it's a quite honor that to be able to to talk about this or hear your side of the story, since this is part of your life for a long time. How do you feel moving on as an author? Do you feel there is a change in direction, or are you still inspired in the same way?
Oh, I don't know. The problem being, and that Cato Gunfeldt, because he wrote a lot. He wrote a lot about Norwegian fighter pilots.
Yeah.
And I spoke briefly to him a few years back now, and he said he had come to like the end of the road when it came to Norwegian historic aviation. There was just simply, well, I know that he has some books which are unpublished and he should do, but he felt he just, that's it. There's nothing more to write about. And I felt that I can't, go back to the publisher and just present, here's another story about another Norwegian pilot. So considering that, if I'm going to do anything else, it's going to be something else completely. When I have the time, because you like I said, if you're gonna write like a novel like the one the one I did the last, which is called, what do you call it in English? A damn good war, or
Yes.
a damned proper war. You need your mind at the right place, and you need the time, and you can't be disturbed by a lot of outside factors. Which I know that some authors sort of just go off to a cabin somewhere and they spend like 3 weeks there and they just write like an insane amount of which I can do, but for now I sort of retracted my historic aviation into NSF, and doing books, because the thing was that the last one, the one we in English call The Damn Good War, it was supposed to be a trilogy. So it was supposed to be 3 books. And I did start on the second one, but I just I saw that, okay, I can't I can't spend this time doing that, because when you're not writing it, you're constantly thinking of, okay, how I'm gonna do that, or how I'm gonna tie that loose end up, or so you need the time and you need the mindset, but it's there, so I could do that, but for now there will be NSF, and I do have like 40 pages on something completely different, which I might look into again, but like Cato Gunfeldt, I think that we have done, well, he's done enough in literature to put Norwegian pilots back where they belong in the first place, and I did that to Leif Lundsten, which he deserved. I did that, to Finn Torshager too, but mostly to Leif Lundsten because he was killed during the war. So put him back where he belongs as one of the the greatest Spitfire pilots ever. And then now we're going to focus on the machinery part and try to see if we can keep Spitfire flying again. So
Yes.
that's the logical next step. So in terms of writing, don't know. But in terms of something else, then sure.
Yes. No, and that's an excellent question, since there's nothing is certain, and it's for me it brings memories of editing. You reach a point where you feel you need to do something else and just try something else, and if you are finish something that you're really pleased with, and it's a sort of a fulfilling feeling that I've done the part I was supposed to do. And you feel like you are ready to step on to a different type of challenge, or just evolve as in the creative arts you do.
Correct.
You want to move on, not in a negative way. You just want to evolve. I think it's a better word.
Yeah, correct. I think my dad once said that you're not supposed to keep a job for more than 10 years because then you get bored. It's not exactly like that with this interest, because it will always be around, and I'm always doing what I can do. But you need to find some challenges, and if that's something else, in terms of writing, then sure. But I'm always sticking to it, so I'm never gonna leave it alone because I'm too heavily involved to do that. So who knows, if we're ever going to do let's see, a book on PL258, because I know Andy Saunders, another author, he did one on a Spitfire Mark 1 a couple of years back. And if we're ever going to do something like that, which we should do with PL258, I'll be happy to write that.
That would be an amazing opportunity. I wish the best. I would be happy to join that team too. Since the more minds together we could. There's the PL258 is. I guess we're digressing a bit here, but the PL258 is a symbol of more than just a plane, and it has so many personal stories of not only the pilots that flew the aircraft, but the whole context, as we said. It needs to have context, and everything around it's its own sort of time and place. It's a time capsule of a time that's no more, and it needs to be remembered. And I think that is a great moment to move to where you come into NSF, since you just said that focusing your available time with NSF. So how did you get into the foundation in the first place?
Yes, let's do that. And okay, well, the lights went off. Okay, we still have power.
Good.
Yes. Well, I'll just start from scratch, and I'll end up with the P-51 flight in 2015. How's that?
Oh, yes,
I'll do that. I'll do that.
That's very good. I was going to ask about that. Go ahead.
Well, actually, I don't know if I'm sure it was Lars who got in touch with me, that I know. I'm not sure how he did. Maybe he sent me an email or he sent me a text or something like that. Because I saw on Facebook back then, because in 2000 and I think it was 13. Eskil Amdahl had made a Facebook page for the foundation. Not a lot of information, back then, and so it was just basically a Facebook page with, and maybe there was a website, I don't know. But anyway, Lars wanted to meet me and just introduce me to this organization. So we met at Gardermoen over a cup of coffee, and he just told me a little bit about his background, and because I knew that he had been flying the Mustang and the Invader, so he wasn't unknown, of course not. So, but apparently, I don't know if it was him or Eskil who found my website, because I used to have a website dedicated to some Norwegian pilots, and I had some articles up and stuff like that. So I'm sure they wanted to use me to create articles, sort of merge my website into NSF, and I'm sure they wanted someone with a bit of social media or internet knowledge to do their bit online, which of course I said yes, I would be happy to. So I did that, on top of writing all those books.
Oh yes. Did they know you were writing so many books at the same time?
I have no idea.
They know now.
Oh yeah. So it was like work-wise, 30% NSF and 70% book writing, and But like I said, the time I spent on that was just insane. I was playing football, and that was it, and I was just doing this type of stuff. In the beginning it was just the board, which consisted of 5 or 6 people, and most of them are still there, but we're a lot more people now. The organization doesn't look anything like it used to back then, but I put a full focus on social media, and because my other Facebook page, which sort of I don't really do anything with it anymore, had like 14,000 people. So I wanted to bring those guys over to NSF by posting and keeping that connection to history, because I think Lars said during the podcast I did with him, he said that at first they just wanted to fly the Spitfire, and then they realized that they had to connect history and the people with the Spitfire, and that was like I think that was the smartest move that I ever did, to combine that, because that's where you sort of find the magic of it.
See the results now. So many people come together in a common goal to restore Spitfire, to represent the symbol of the contribution of all the Norwegians who fought in the war.
Yeah, and instead of being excluding like some organizations before us, we wanted to include anyone who wanted to participate and do their bit was welcome to do so, which is one of the genius moves that they did so early on, to bring as much people involved as possible. But you see, this interest is, you would imagine that this interest is quite narrow, but it's not. There's so many approaches to this. You can approach this topic in so many ways. You can come from the camera side, photographic side, like Eirik Østensjø or those photographers, or you can come from the literature side, like Cato Gundfeldt. You can come from the pilot side, like Lars or Eskil. You can come from or the RSC side, like the models, and there's so many. So you just grab people from all of those categories, and then you get NSF, which is very, very smart in my opinion. So we were, when I started out with NSF, I actually did considerable amount of work with just with the websites and a lot of other stuff that I can't even remember what I was doing. But I was lucky enough to as a thank you, I think from NSF or from Sean Patrick, who owned the Mustang, that I was able to go on a flight or a display practice as it was. So
not in just any aircraft.
No. So that was I haven't really flown I've flown in a Cessna and I've flown a P-51 Mustang, and that's it. So
it's a good repertoire. It's begin with the Mustang at top. It's
just skip the Tiger Moss and skip all those things. Just go straight to the Mustang. So yeah. So I had been, I was offered to take a flight in it when there was an opportunity to do so, and I was a bit lucky because that moment came on a Thursday before Flying Legends. So I just changed my ticket. I flew to Sola, Stavanger, and in transit there, and went to London. So I managed to get down to Duxford Wednesday evening, something like that. And then I stayed at Duxford for the entire Thursday, just waiting for the Shark or the Mustang to show up.
How many butterflies did you have in your stomach then?
Well, can't really, I was. No, here's a good story about that. It's sort of like butterflies, but when I was seated in the Mustang, getting to grips with the the cockpit and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then Lars was off doing something, or I don't know. And
you were alone in the plane.
No, I think he was just at the tail doing something.
Oh yes, yeah.
And then I start to think that, like, how should I put this in writing? Because I felt an obligation to everyone to be able to to write down or to tell people what this is like, because it doesn't happen to well, now it does, because you can just sort of buy yourself a flight, and but that costs a lot of money. So I wanted to just convey the experience. So I was really thinking, like, how do I do this the proper way? And then I think it was John Dodd, because he flew the Mustang to Duxford that day, and he saw my face, and I'm sure he thought I was very being a bit worried about.
Oh, yeah.
So he's like, so he's Scottish, so he's like, have you ever flown a fighter before? And I was like, it's like, well, you shouldn't be too worried. It's like, no, I'm not worried. I'm just thinking of how to put this in words.
Yeah, we Norwegians are not very good with words. He is very good with words, though. So,
yeah. So well, yeah. So. And then Lars did the practice display, which I tried to write down afterwards, and and sort of some of his pull-ups, they sort of caught me by surprise, because I didn't have time to tighten up the muscles.
I know the feeling.
Yeah. So I was almost blacking out a couple of times, which I found interesting. I wasn't really scared. But I do remember, like, being upside down over Duxford, and my head was sort of crashing into the cockpit, the hood, and I was looking down on it, and it's like, okay, so this is happening. So you never forget a thing like that, and especially because when I was growing up, my the Mustang was in the belonged to Scandinavian Historic Flight. And I remember my dad, like, talking about how to get a ride in a Mustang, and how do I do that? And he couldn't find that opportunity or the chance to, because back then it was almost impossible to even be near a Mustang in Norway. So I thought that was a lot of fun, which sort of like culminates 3 generations of aviation interests with me in the backseat of the Mustang. So I was sort of trying to take it all in, and do a good write-up of that experience, because you never know if that's ever gonna come my way again. So that was important, and it's like 6 years ago now. So yeah, so defining moment.
Yes.
It's like I remember walking over to the Mustang. I'm thinking, like, okay, how do I ever gonna top this? Which I never did. So sorry.
Just listening to you now, Tor Idar, it just my incredible flight in the Mustang 2 just flashes back, and my one of the most amazing moments is just before it all happens. Is you're lined up and Lars slowly throttles up, and you can just hear them whirling, going from a small purr to stronger and stronger and stronger, and you're wondering, when is it gonna stop? It just keeps getting louder and louder. How was that for you? Did you feel like, oh, it's happening now? We're going.
Yeah. Funny. I was, during takeoff, I was sort of just looking at people who, because I didn't have a camera with me, like that.
Yeah.
So I was just looking for someone, like, please there must be someone here that I know that's taking a photograph of this thing. And you know, luckily there was, because I know a guy, great guy. He's called his name is Hugh Hopkins. He's heavily involved with historic aviation. He and his comrades, they were there, and he took a lot of photos. I have some photos of me, and there's one photo of me taking off, but I'm looking the wrong direction because I'm looking towards the hangars. I'm not looking towards the fields, which was stupid, because I should have looked the other way. So they have, Hugh caught my face, but I'm there. So a lot of fun.
It's definitely true. You'll never forget. You definitely don't forget the G's.
You never forget the G's. They don't do G's in simulators apparently. So
no, and they don't come that fast. And off your attention, you're thinking, okay, this is going to be okay. Oh God, this isn't good. That's basically how it was. Yeah. Oh no. Oh, thanks for bringing my memories back too.
No worries. I should have done some more book stories, because there's a lot. I do have a lot of good book stories. But I'm sure you have like a few questions. So we should just stick to your questions first.
Well, my questions are not that important, but they too many more questions pop up. But I think one that's really relevant for us now as a team, as the PR team as well, is what do you think of the PL258 project, and how do you see it go ahead and move forward?
I think that this is our window of opportunity. So we need to strike when the iron is hot. We need to do that now. This is our window of opportunity. And it looks like it's falling into place in a good way. We had some, we tried a few other, paths at first, and we tried, there's one in Australia, and then we had a Spitfire, at Gardermoen too. And, but I think we landed on, the right Spitfire and the right story, and the fact that this particular Spitfire has been flown by so many people. So this is our chance to put all those words into the air, and to put history back where it belongs. So yes, I'm not sure about the time frame. I know as much about that as you, but yes, we know it takes some time to restore and reproduce and recreate a Spitfire, and then there's also the money. We have been lucky now to get some funding from the state, and I'm sure we will be getting more funding. So all in all, I think the future is looking very good. We have a huge team involved. So overall, very positive.
Absolutely. I fully agree. And I think the very important part of the project is, or the official funding that we got in summer, is that it shows that officially we are recognized for what we're doing. So it shows that we are a team that is capable of doing our mission, which is to restore a Spitfire and operate historic aircraft. Where we have the experience, we have the team, and we have the knowledge, and we have the passion. And the team is large and varied, diverse, and it shows that we will be able to do this now that we finally have everything. All the pieces are slowly falling together and becoming, this project with the Norwegian war history. There's not many Spitfires that have Norwegian history, and and now we can be able to hopefully, honor their memory. Since no one has done it yet, it's as the same as with the merchant navy of the Norwegian merchant navy, or the sailors during the war. They've always been in a subject of being forgotten, and the same is with the airmen and the ground crew and all the Norwegians fighting abroad. It's a common theme that they've been forgotten, and we must make sure that we honor their memory and they're not forgotten.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah.
That leaves us to one thing I agree with you, which only I know, I think, but the people who've written your books, maybe they should know. So which Mark of Spitfire is your favorite one? I know which one, but why is it?
Haha. I should do like what you did, and really do a long answer to this
go
question.
Ahead then, because it's only 24 marks, so it can only take half an hour.
Can only take half an hour. No, well, my favorite Mark of Spitfire comes from, well, the looks of it, but also because there is a local connection to that specific mark. Like, well, there's a local connection here to the Mark 9, but there's a lot of Norwegians who flew the Mark 5 and the Mark 9. And then you have Rolf Arne Berg's Mark 9 with the with the flag and all of that. But it's my favorite because maybe I'm stepping on some other toes here, but I'm the one who rediscovered that specific part of history, using some strong words. But I'm very proud of discovering that fact, even though it's like super geeky. Because it's just so geeky, but I loved it, and there's a story to it, because the specific Mark of Spitfire we're talking about is the Mark 12,
I knew it.
Which got a huge engine mounted basically on a Mark 5 airframe, and you chop the wingtips off, and it couldn't be any cooler than that.
It's the most Frankenstein idea. Let's put the biggest engine we have on the smallest plane we have. Let's go.
I couldn't. It looks so brutal. It's indescribable. But anyway, it was one of the Mark 12, and this we're talking about one specific Spitfire, which is MB882. Which was one of the most photographed Spitfires during the war, because they did some air-to-air sorties with that Spitfire. And I discovered this looking into Leif Lundsten's logbook. We haven't really talked about who he is, but to the outsiders, he flew with 331 Squadron for almost the entire duration of the war, and he was also a test pilot with Vickers Supermarine Spitfire Vickers Supermarine, not Spitfire, during 1943. And he's from my area. He grew up in a very, very small place called Billit in Østre Toten. So he's a purebred Totening, more than me. So, but I managed to get hold of his logbook, and which sort of ended up as the book. And I saw in the logbook that he had flown MB882. And I thought, wait a minute, that serial number is quite, I've seen that before. Yes. So I went online, and there's so many photos of that Spitfire, and it wasn't to be, but when I discovered that Leif had flown that specific Spitfire just a few days before that air-to-air sortie, and just for a few moments I thought that this is Leif Lundsten flying MB882 during that sortie. That's one of those moments when you get very geeked out, and you get chills down your spine, right?
Yes.
So but no, he didn't flew it at that time, but he picked the Spitfire up at High Post, which was where they put together basically new Spitfires, and he flew it down to Worthy Down, and then he also flew it to North Weald to visit some friends. So there's a connection there is a Norwegian connection to the Mark 12, and so that's the human side of it, but there's also just the machine because it looks really cool.
I imagine the guys at 331 and Northwheel, they were pretty envious when this guy comes rolling down with this huge thoroughbred with this massive engine ahead, and he just hello.
Yeah, can you imagine? Can you imagine, like, you got the Mark 9s and the stuff, and that's fine, and they're very cool, and then this this Frankenstein or this this monster of a Spitfire is like, is this a Mark 5? No, it's like what's with the engine? And it sounds different. Like, you can imagine what they were discussing, because he came to Northwheel to see his friends. I'm sure he did. So maybe he did it because he wanted to, or maybe he did it because someone told him. But if he had lived, I'm sure he could have told that story. But I managed to at least, take that specific part of history and pull that out of the, the darkness of no one knowing, and put that in a book. And that's like one of those things I'm basically proud of, because that was just very, very cool stuff.
It's geeky, but it's how it should be.
well, if it's not geeky, then it's no fun.
It's boring. Yeah, it's definitely true.
Yeah. So if like people outside the community, listening to us talking about MB882, like why they wouldn't really understand, but.
Well, if you've seen the photograph of MB882, it's the closest one. You're thinking of the one where it's in formation with 3 other Spitfires, isn't it? And it's the closest one to the camera.
Oh yeah, and that one, and the one where he's over I think it's the coast of England, and then yes, and then coming very close to the camera, and then there's photographs on the ground and looking very, very cool. So with a Spitfire, it's like if you're a kid and you see a Spitfire, it's like you can't help but be fascinated, even though if you don't like anything to do with aviation. Everyone knows what a Spitfire is.
And that's why we're going to have a flying PL258, since the best way to inspire people is to hear and see a Spitfire in the air flying by.
Yes, and you can put a few of those on in a museum, and you can look at it, and but it's not going to be the same. If you put it in a museum, it's a dead aircraft, and it works for some people. And going back to some of our earliest ideas in NSF to fly the one at Gardermoen, I think that's a Mark 11.
Mark 11, the PR11, yes.
Yeah. And I know that some people were very against such an idea, and sure, but they're coming from, like I said, this is a very varied type of interest, and they're coming from somewhere else. And Lars and those guys are coming from the pilot side, and I'm coming from someone else. And it's just a matter of opinion. But hell, I would put every Spitfire in the air if I could. But I do respect and understand that some have to stay on the ground. Fine. But they belong in the air. Come on.
When you hear a Spitfire and you hear a Merlin, you can't go back. It's
no.
Life-changing moment.
Yeah. It's like this, and the sound, like, okay, you have a F-16 and they look cool, and it's gray on a gray cloud base, and fine, but and it goes fast and stuff, but the sound when something like that flies by is like you can't. There's nothing you can compare that to. So I think it's and that's the key, because you can write a book and you can get people into this that way. But I am confident when I say that I think a lot of interest in aviation from people my age and 10 years younger than me, the origins of their interest comes from an air show.
Yes.
And just to add to that, because we have time, we can talk a little bit more. So
yes, we'll just keep talking.
We're on a roll
until people don't want to listen anymore, and all the lights in your workplace goes down and shuts off, and your alarm goes on.
I think so. Yeah, I think they just left. So but no alarm.
Yeah.
But we sort of skipped Flying Legends, because I talked to Eirik about it. I talked to you about it, and I came to Duxford for the first time in 2005, little bit by luck or by chance, but I had done some research just prior to go to England, because I went with a friend of mine, and we weren't, going to England to look at airplanes. We were going to the pubs. That was, our plan. Just, we were drinking beer.
That's a common Norwegian plan.
Yeah. So, but we wanted to see some sights. So I decided that I wanted to see if there's any aviation going on, and I saw an ad for Flying Legends, which turned out to be at the same date as I was there. And I had always had an interest, but coming into Duxford in 2005 and watching the Spitfire opening sequence. Actually, I think Battle of Britain Memorial Flight opened that year, but whatever. That sort of, it kickstarts stuff. It's a boost of massive adrenaline, or whatever you want to call it. And I walked out of those gates a different person than when I went in, and which is why to me and you and a lot of people, Flying Legends and Duxford is very personal stuff. Because
for me, that's only been there for a couple of years.
Well, it means, if you've been there a couple of years or you've been there for 10 years, it really means, something special. And I think it was a Norwegian who said this, because I'm not sure if this is the same for British people, maybe. Because when that stuff happened, when they announced that Flying Legends and Duxford were, going separate ways, one Norwegian said that, okay, you ruined the spell. You broke the spell between today and history by doing that. Because for a lot of people, at least Norwegians and Swedes and stuff like that, Poles, coming to Duxford was like going back in history and actually taking part of or merging with history.
It was a time capsule.
Yes. So when something like that happens, you're sort of getting pulled out of history and whatever, and you realize that you're not in 1940, you're in 2021. But for me, that was Flying Legends was a milestone, and without Flying Legends, I don't think there would be any books. I probably wouldn't be an NSF.
I certainly wouldn't be an NSF.
No,
I think since you brought me into this world.
Yeah. So Flying Legends is the core of my dedication and my interest, because that's where it all comes from. Sort of, not all, but yeah. A lot. And when Flying Legends, and I'm hoping that they find a good home at Sywell and everything falls into place. But with Legends taking a bit of a hit, I also took a little bit of hit when it came to my interest. It's still there, but it's not insane. It's not like I'm one step ahead of being, having a diagnosis of some sort of mental illness, because I spent that amount of time on historic aviation. So yeah. So we've discussed Flying Legends too. So
yes,
yeah.
It's it really hit me too when Nick Gray announced that it was closing down the venue at Duxford. It just it's the only time that I've just sat down and produced a film in 2 hours. I just made it there.
And well, that's the thing with
and then I didn't make
desperate times, because then you create something, right?
I didn't make anything for half a year after that. I was just I was sapped. My interest was sapped.
Yeah,
I was just like, yeah. There was no more interest really in that half year. It was just because you knew that was the highlight of the year, and you knew that was part of sort of it was how you say it revived you, because you managed to get into this community and world where you felt that you actually had a passionate part of, and then it just broke. So I made that film, and then I didn't make anything for half a year.
Yeah,
That
sort
was
of,
really-
because you know, someone just take your artery and you chop that off, and then you at least have to spend some time, you know, mending at least. So no, without that 2005 and onwards, I don't think there would be any. I would have an interest, but it wouldn't be like that. So going from pretty interested to just full dedication for almost a decade. So I've scaled that down, not just because of the, you know, situation and circumstance, but, you know, I also have a family, so it cannot be the same. But but it fell into place because if everything was different, I wouldn't be able to anyway. So everything fell in the right pecking order, so to speak. So I could spend that amount of time writing the book about Leif or Finn Eriksrud flying mosquitoes or Viking Spitfire and all of that, and it's just in the right pecking order, so to speak. And now I think the focus will have to be on PL258 and NSF.
And with those very great ending words, I think we are at an end. Thank you very much to Idar for spending your time with me, and I hope everyone who's listened will come out wiser. Do you have any last words to say?
Well, any last words? Maybe we should just make our own podcast and just discuss, you know, anything aviation related. But
NSF and anything aviation talks.
Yeah. Just maybe I should just widen the perspective a little bit on what we're going to do with this podcast. But
I'm going to be a long title. I need to make a very long banner. Yeah.
Well, yes. I have the statistics on this podcast, and I'm pretty happy with what we produced. This is just like in a spur of the moment type of thing. We don't really have any fancy equipment. I just, you know, edit this, you know, quite easily. I publish it on these platforms, and it's quite easy. And maybe the sound isn't too good at times, and maybe there's alarms going off or whatever. And we're not, you know, native English speakers. We do our best. But just thank you to those who listen, and I have a good time doing it, and maybe you'll come back for another guest appearance at some point, and let's maybe we'll just have like one topic to discuss. Let's, you know, you can bring us some of my internet friends from Britain around, and we can just have an hour-long discussion on Flying Legends or whatever.
Yeah, I'd love to have like a round the table discussion.
We have to look into that. So
yeah.
We have to look into that just to bring some more people around. So next for this podcast will be, I have to find my next subject of interest, so to speak. I haven't really decided who to ask yet. It will most likely be someone within the organization. I have been playing with some other names, but it will have to be. I have some ideas at least, so we'll see. We'll see. Yes.
From Tor Idar and Knut, we will see you some other time.
We will. Goodbye.
Goodbye.